She was invisible. A 28-year-old waitress drowning in medical debt, serving $40 coffees to people who never bothered to learn her name. But when a grown man grabbed a terrified little girl by the arm and called her a mute freak, Eliana Cross stopped being invisible. She stepped between them. She took the screaming. She got fired on the spot. What she didn't know, that little girl's father was watching from the shadows. And he wasn't just any father. He was Marcus Valentino, the most dangerous man in Boston. What happened next didn't just change her life. It started a war. And from the ashes of that war rose a love story no one saw coming. The restaurant had gone deathly silent. Every fork frozen midair. Every conversation dead on arrival. Eliana stood her ground, arms spread wide, shielding the trembling child behind her. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged animal. But she refused to move. Derek's face had turned an ugly shade of purple. His hand was still raised, ready to strike. I said, "Get out of my way, Cross. Last warning." "No." The word came out steadier than she felt. Eliana could feel the little girl's fingers clutching the back of her apron, tiny fists balled into the cheap fabric. She could feel the silent sobs shaking that small body. She wasn't moving. Not for Derek. Not for anyone. Derek stepped forward, his cheap cologne mixing with the smell of his rage. "You're going to regret I wouldn't do that if I were you." The voice came from the patio doorway. Low, smooth, cold enough to freeze the blood in Eliana's veins. Derek stopped mid-step, his raised hand slowly lowered. A man stepped out of the shadows. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. A thin scar ran from his left temple down to his cheekbone, interrupting the sharp line of his jaw. But it was his eyes that made Eliana's breath catch. Steel gray, empty, the eyes of a man who had seen death and dealt it without flinching. He walked slowly into the dining room, each footstep deliberate, measured. Behind him, 2 other men appeared large, silent, watching. Derek's face drained of color. Mr. Valentino. I didn't know she was." The man Valentino didn't even glance at Derek. He walked past him as if he were furniture. He stopped 3 feet from Eliana. She tensed, ready to fight, ready to run, ready for anything. But he didn't look at her. He looked at the child. Slowly, carefully, he knelt down on one knee. The expensive fabric of his suit touched the floor without hesitation. His entire demeanor shifted, the coldness melting into something raw and vulnerable. "Sophia." His voice was soft now, gentle. "Are you hurt?" The little girl peeked out from behind Eliana's legs. Her tear-streaked face studied the man for a moment. Then her small hands began to move quick, deliberate gestures that Eliana didn't understand. Sign language. The man watched every movement. His jaw tightened. Something dark flashed across his features. "What did she say?" Eliana whispered before she could stop herself. The man rose slowly. When he turned to face Derek, the gentleness was gone. In its place was something terrifying. "She said you grabbed her arm." His voice was barely above a whisper. "She said you called her a freak. And she said—" He paused, glancing at Eliana. "She said this woman protected her." Derek stumbled backward. "Sir, please. I had no idea she was your daughter. I swear, I didn't know. My name is Marcus Valentino." He said it quietly, almost casually. But the effect was immediate. A woman at a nearby table gasped. A businessman quickly gathered his things and headed for the exit. Derek looked like he might vomit. "Mr. Valentino, please." Derek dropped to his knees, literally groveling. "I'll do anything. Anything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Marcus raised one hand. A simple gesture. The 2 men behind him moved forward, grabbing Derek by the arms. "Roman." Marcus didn't raise his voice. "Take him somewhere quiet. We'll discuss his apology later." No, please. Please." Derek's screams faded as he was dragged toward the kitchen, away from the watching eyes of the patrons. The restaurant remained frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Marcus Valentino turned. For the first time, he looked at Eliana, really looked at her. His steel eyes traveled over her stained uniform, her exhausted face, the dark circles under her eyes. He studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Eliana lifted her chin. She didn't know why. Defiance, maybe. Or stupidity. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. Eliana shook her head. Marcus studied her face, not with curiosity, with calculation. His gray eyes moved over the hollows beneath her cheekbones, the way her uniform hung loose on her frame. the slight tremor in her hands that she couldn't quite control. "You're exhausted," he said. It wasn't a question. Eliana stiffened. "I'm fine. You're lying." She opened her mouth to argue, but Sophia was still clinging to her leg, and suddenly the adrenaline that had kept her standing began to drain away. Her vision blurred for just a moment. 3 a.m, the smoke alarm screaming, Eliana jolting awake to find orange light dancing beneath her bedroom door. "When did you last eat?" Marcus asked. "That's none of your business." She had kicked open Mia's door. Her little sister, only 22, was unconscious on the floor, smoke filling her lungs. Eliana had grabbed her arms, dragged her toward the window. "You work here," Marcus continued, ignoring her deflection. "But this isn't your only job, is it?" Eliana's jaw tightened. How could he possibly know that? The flames had been everywhere, eating the walls, consuming the hallway. She had screamed for her parents, but the fire had already reached their bedroom. The ceiling collapsed before she could get to them. "I clean offices at night," she heard herself say. "What does it matter?" Marcus tilted his head slightly. "How many hours do you sleep?" Mia had survived. Barely. 60% of her body covered in burns. 8 surgeries in 2 years. A medically induced coma that lasted 3 months. And when she finally woke up, she couldn't recognize her own face. 4, Eliana whispered. Sometimes 3. The hospital bills came like a flood. $847,000 and climbing. The insurance company found a loophole pre-existing condition, they claimed. Denied. Every appeal rejected. Every payment plan impossible. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Behind him, the restaurant had begun to empty. Patrons slipping out one by one, desperate to escape the tension that hung in the air like smoke. "You sold everything," Marcus said softly. "Didn't you?" Eliana's throat constricted. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her parents' house gone, her car gone. Her nursing degree abandoned 3 credits shy of graduation because she couldn't afford the final semester. Everything she had worked for, burned to ash, along with the only family she had left. "You had a different life once." Marcus stepped closer, not threatening, almost careful. "You were going to be a nurse. How do you know that?" Her voice cracked. "I notice things." His eyes dropped to her hands, the way she had checked Sophia's arm for injury without thinking, the way she had positioned herself to protect the child's head. "You have training." Derek's voice echoed in her memory. "Stay late tonight. Just you and me." His hand on her lower back, his breath on her neck. The threat underneath his smile, "Refuse me, and you're gone." She had endured it, for months, because losing this job meant losing Mia. "The man who grabbed my daughter," Marcus said quietly. "He's done more than yell at you, hasn't he?" Eliana's silence was answer enough. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. The cold calculation gave way to something darker, more dangerous. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "How long?" he asked. "It doesn't matter now." Eliana forced a bitter smile. "I'm fired. Remember?" Sophia tugged on her father's jacket, signing something rapidly. Marcus watched, then looked back at Eliana with an expression she couldn't read. "My daughter says you have sad eyes," he translated. "She says you look like you're carrying something heavy." Eliana felt the tears threatening to surface. She bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. "We all carry something," she managed. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, but somehow more intense. "How much would it take," he asked slowly, "to escape the hell you're living in?" Eliana stared at him. The question hung in the air between them, impossible and absurd. "Excuse me?" "It's a simple question." Marcus didn't blink. "How much would it cost to pay off your sister's medical bills? To get her proper treatment? To give you both a chance at a life that doesn't involve starving yourself and enduring men like Derek Holbrook? I don't need your charity. This isn't charity." Marcus glanced down at Sophia, who was still pressed against Eliana's leg. "This is a job offer." Eliana laughed, a short, bitter sound. "A job offer. From a man whose name just made an entire restaurant evacuate. You're not afraid of me. Maybe I'm just too tired to be afraid." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. "My daughter needs a caretaker," he said. "Someone who can be with her during the day. Someone patient. Someone who won't treat her like she's broken." Eliana looked down at Sophia. The little girl's dark eyes stared back at her, wide and trusting. "I've hired 5 nannies in the past 2 years, Marcus continued. "The first one quit after 3 days. Said the house made her uncomfortable. The second lasted a week before she complained that Sophia was difficult. The third," he paused, "the third was afraid of me. And the other 2? They couldn't handle her silence. They wanted her to talk. They pushed. They prodded. They made her cry. His voice hardened. I fired them both. Eliana felt Sophia's grip tighten on her apron. Mr. Valentino, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified. I'm not a child psychologist. I'm not a speech therapist. I'm just a waitress who threw away her only source of income to protect a stranger's child. Marcus cut her off. Do you know what Sophia told me? In sign language? Eliana shook her head. She said you have warm hands. He paused. My daughter hasn't let anyone touch her in 3 years. Not the doctors, not the nannies, not even me, most days. But right now, she's holding on to you like you're the only safe thing in the world. Eliana looked down again. Sophia had wrapped both arms around her leg now, her small face pressed against Eliana's thigh. Something cracked inside her chest. Mia, lying in that hospital bed, tubes and wires and machines keeping her alive. Her beautiful face hidden beneath bandages. Alone. Always alone. Because Eliana couldn't afford to take time off work to sit with her. The terms, Marcus said, pulling her back to the present. $15,000 a month. Room and board at my estate. Full medical coverage for your sister, the best doctors in Boston. Private facilities. Whatever she needs. Eliana's breath caught. $15,000 a month. That was more than she made in 6 months combined. That was Mia's next surgery. That was a future. I'm not an expert, she repeated weakly. I don't know sign language. I don't know how to help a child who's been through trauma. She doesn't need an expert. Marcus stepped closer. She needs someone who isn't afraid. Someone who will protect her without hesitation. Someone who sees a child, not a problem to be solved. His gray eyes held hers. You did that today, without knowing who she was, without knowing who I am. You stood between her and a man twice your size, and you didn't back down. Eliana swallowed hard. Her mind was racing. Every logical part of her screamed that this was insane, that taking a job from a man like Marcus Valentino was a one-way ticket to disaster. But then she looked at Sophia, a 7-year-old girl who couldn't speak, who flinched when strangers got too close, who had just watched a grown man scream in her face and had found safety in the arms of a stranger. No more children suffering. Not if she could help it. Are there any other conditions? Eliana heard herself ask. Marcus's expression shifted. The businessman making an offer disappeared. In his place stood something far more dangerous. Before you answer, he said, you need to understand what you're walking into. Eliana straightened. I'm listening. The man who grabbed my daughter, Derek Holbrook. Marcus paused. He's not just a restaurant manager. He's the nephew of Patrick Malone. The name meant nothing to Eliana. She shook her head. Patrick Malone runs the Irish mob in Boston, Marcus explained. He controls the unions, the docks, half the politicians in City Hall, and Derek is his sister's only son. Eliana felt the blood drain from her face. Irish mob? You humiliated his nephew in public. You made him grovel on his knees in front of a room full of witnesses. Marcus's voice was flat. Malone won't forgive that. He'll want revenge. But I didn't know. It doesn't matter what you knew. It matters what you did. Marcus glanced at Sophia, then back at Eliana. If you come to my estate, you become part of my world. That means you become a target. Eliana's mind raced. The Irish mob. Targets. Revenge. This was insane. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined. But then she thought of Mia, her sister, lying in that overcrowded public hospital, sharing a room with 3 other patients, nurses too overworked to check on her properly, medications delayed because of insurance paperwork, infections that came from understaffing and budget cuts. Mia was dying slowly in that place, not from her burns from neglect. If I say no, Eliana said slowly, what happens to me? You're already a target. Marcus didn't soften the truth. Malone knows your face now. Your name. Where you work or worked. The only difference is whether you face him alone or under my protection. Alone. The word echoed in Eliana's chest. She had been alone for 2 years, carrying everything by herself, drowning in debt and exhaustion and grief. And where had it gotten her? Fired, broke, desperate. She had nothing left to lose. I need my sister moved to a better hospital, Eliana said. Before anything else, tonight. Marcus nodded once. Done. And I want to see the facility myself. I want to meet the doctors. Of course. And if I decide this isn't working, if I want to leave, then you leave. Marcus held her gaze. I don't keep prisoners, Miss Cross. Only allies. Eliana looked down at Sophia. The little girl had finally released her leg and was now holding her hand instead. Small fingers wrapped around hers, warm and trusting. When was the last time anyone trusted her like this? Okay, Eliana whispered. I'll do it. Marcus gestured toward the door. A black Escalade was already waiting outside, engine running. Roman, the large man who had taken Derek away, stood by the rear door. Eliana walked out of the Sterling house for the last time. The afternoon sun was blinding after the dim interior. She paused on the sidewalk, looking back at the restaurant that had been her prison for 18 months. Then she climbed into the Escalade. Sophia scrambled in after her, immediately pressing close to her side. Marcus slid into the seat across from them. The door closed with a heavy thunk. The car pulled away from the curb, merging into Boston traffic. "Miss Cross," Marcus said quietly, watching her through the shadows of the tinted windows. She met his eyes. "You have no idea what you just walked into." The drive took 40 minutes. Boston's crowded streets gave way to winding suburban roads, then to dense forests that swallowed the fading daylight. Sophia had fallen asleep against Eliana's shoulder, her small hand still clutching Eliana's fingers. Marcus spent the entire drive on his phone, speaking in low tones about things Eliana couldn't quite hear. Words like perimeter and security protocol drifted across the leather interior. Then the trees parted. Eliana's breath caught in her throat. A massive iron gate rose before them, at least 12 feet tall, topped with ornate spikes that gleamed in the last rays of sunset. Security cameras rotated slowly on stone pillars. Armed guards in dark suits stood at attention, their eyes scanning the road behind the Escalade. The gate swung open silently. The driveway stretched for nearly half a mile, lined with perfectly manicured hedges and marble statues, and at the end of it stood the house. No, not a house, a mansion. 3 stories of Italian Renaissance architecture, limestone walls, arched windows, terracotta roof tiles that glowed amber in the dying light. Ivy crept up the eastern wing, and a massive fountain dominated the circular courtyard, water cascading over carved angels. "This isn't a house," Eliana whispered. "This is a fortress." Marcus glanced at her. "It has to be." The car stopped at the front entrance. Roman appeared from nowhere, opening Eliana's door with surprising gentleness. Up close, she could see the scars that crisscrossed his face, old wounds that told stories of violence. But when he looked at Sophia, still sleeping against Eliana's arm, his expression softened. "Careful with the little one," he murmured. "She doesn't sleep well most nights." Eliana nodded, carefully lifting Sophia into her arms. The girl stirred but didn't wake, her head falling against Eliana's shoulder. The front doors opened before they reached them. A woman stood in the entrance hall, elderly, perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a crisp black dress and an expression that could curdle milk. Her dark eyes swept over Eliana from head to toe, cataloging every stain on her uniform, every loose thread, every sign of poverty. "Mrs. Bianchi," Marcus said. "This is Eliana Cross. She'll be Sophia's new caretaker." Mrs. Bianchi's lips pressed into a thin line. "Another one. This one is different. They always are." The old woman's gaze lingered on Eliana for a moment longer, suspicion radiating from every pore. Then she turned sharply. "Follow me." Eliana followed, still carrying Sophia, through an entrance hall that belonged in a museum. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, oil paintings in gilded frames, every surface gleamed with meticulous care. They climbed a sweeping staircase to the second floor. Mrs. Bianchi stopped at a door near the end of the corridor. "Your room." She pushed the door open. Eliana stepped inside and froze. The room was larger than her entire studio apartment. A queen-sized bed dominated one wall, draped in silk sheets the color of cream. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate gardens. A fireplace sat cold and clean in the corner. And through an open door, she glimpsed a private bathroom, marble countertops, a clawfoot tub, towels thick enough to drown in. "The closet has been stocked," Mrs. Bianchi said flatly. "Mr. Valentino had your sizes estimated. If anything doesn't fit, inform me." Eliana walked to the closet and opened it. Rows of clothes hung in neat lines, dresses, blouses, slacks, shoes. More clothing than she had owned in her entire life. Her eyes burned. 24 hours ago, she had been eating leftover bread crusts in a freezing apartment. "Dinner is at 7 o'clock, Mrs. Bianchi said from the doorway. Her voice held no warmth. "Don't be late. The master hates waiting." Sleep wouldn't come. Eliana sat curled in the window seat, knees pulled to her chest, staring out at the darkened gardens below. Moonlight painted silver streaks across the manicured lawns. Somewhere in the distance, a fountain murmured softly. Everything was quiet, too quiet. She wasn't used to silence. Her old apartment had been filled with noise, neighbors arguing through thin walls, traffic rumbling past at all hours, pipes groaning and clanking. The silence here felt heavy, suffocating. Her mind drifted to Mia. Marcus had kept his word. Within 2 hours of arriving at the estate, Mia had been transferred to a private medical facility on the other side of Boston. Eliana had spoken to the head physician herself, a soft-spoken woman who promised round-the-clock care, specialized burn treatment, the best surgeons in New England. Mia was safe, but the relief brought no peace. Instead, Eliana felt untethered, lost. For 2 years, survival had been her only purpose. Working, paying bills, keeping Mia alive. Now someone else was handling all of it, and she didn't know who she was without the weight. What happens when you stop drowning? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Eliana turned. The sound came again, barely audible, like a mouse scratching at wood. She crossed the room and opened the door. Sophia stood in the hallway. She wore pale pink pajamas dotted with tiny stars, her dark hair tangled from attempted sleep. In her arms, she clutched a worn stuffed bear, with one missing eye and fur rubbed thin from years of love. "Sophia?" Eliana knelt down. "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" The little girl shook her head. She hesitated, then held something out, a piece of paper, folded in half. Eliana took it carefully and unfolded it. A drawing, crayon on white paper. 2 figures holding hands, one tall with brown hair, one small with black. Above them, a yellow sun smiled down. Green grass spread beneath their feet, and at the bottom, in wobbly letters, "Thank you." Eliana's vision blurred. She had cried so many times in the past 2 years, tears of exhaustion, tears of grief, tears of hopeless, bone-deep despair. But this was different. These tears came from somewhere else entirely. "Sophia," she whispered, her voice breaking. The little girl stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Eliana's neck. No hesitation, no fear, just pure, unconditional trust. Eliana held her tight, the drawing crumpling between them. When was the last time anyone had thanked her? When was the last time anyone had seen her, really seen her, and thought she was worth something? Sophia pulled back slightly, pointing toward the bed. Her meaning was clear. "You want to stay here tonight?" A small nod. Eliana lifted her up, carrying her to the massive bed that still felt like it belonged to someone else. They climbed under the silk sheets together, Sophia curling into Eliana's side like she had done it 1,000 times before. The stuffed bear Luna wedged between them. In the hallway, a shadow moved. Marcus stood just outside the door, which Eliana had left slightly ajar. He watched them through the gap, his daughter, peaceful for the first time in months, wrapped in the arms of a stranger who had become something more in the span of a single day. His expression shifted. The hardness melted. Something raw and vulnerable flickered across his features before he turned away silently. Inside, Eliana pressed a kiss to Sophia's hair. "I'll protect you," she whispered into the darkness. "I promise." 2 weeks passed like water through open fingers. Eliana and Sophia fell into a rhythm, a gentle routine that shaped their days into something predictable, something safe. For a child who had lived in chaos, predictability was a gift. Mornings began in the sunlit breakfast room. Mrs. Bianchi would set out fresh fruit, warm pastries, scrambled eggs, and orange juice in crystal glasses. Sophia would sit across from Eliana, watching carefully, waiting. She never took the first bite. It took Eliana 3 days to understand. On the 4th morning, she deliberately lifted her fork and ate before offering anything to Sophia. Only then did the little girl pick up her own utensil. "She's checking if it's safe," Eliana realized. "She's checking if I'll stay." So Eliana always ate first. Always. Between meals, she studied. Marcus had provided a stack of books on American Sign Language, along with a tablet loaded with video tutorials. Eliana spent hours practicing in front of her mirror, fingers fumbling through unfamiliar shapes. The first word she mastered was hungry, a flat hand rubbing circles on her stomach. Sophia's eyes had lit up when Eliana signed it correctly. Then came happy, both hands brushing upward against her chest, sad fingers tracing tears down her cheeks. And finally, love arms crossed over her heart. The first time Eliana signed "I love you" to Sophia, the little girl had stared at her for a long moment. Then she'd signed it back, her small hands moving with practiced ease. Eliana had to leave the room to cry. Afternoons belonged to play. They painted watercolors in the garden, Sophia's pictures growing brighter each day, more yellows, more pinks, fewer grays. They read books together on the library floor. Sophia curled in Eliana's lap, turning pages with eager fingers. They chased butterflies across the lawn, Sophia's rare laughter ringing through the air like bells. She was changing, slowly, day by day. The girl who had cowered behind Eliana's legs in that restaurant now ran ahead of her on the garden paths. The girl who flinched at loud noises now giggled when Roman pretended to trip over his own feet. The girl who never smiled now grinned over breakfast, signing jokes that only she and Eliana understood. Even Mrs. Bianchi noticed. "You're doing well, girl," the old woman said one afternoon, watching Sophia skip through the rose garden. Her voice held no warmth, but her eyes did, better than the others. Eliana didn't ask about the others. She didn't want to know. Roman took a different approach to approval. One morning, he appeared in the garden where Eliana sat reading. "You should learn to defend yourself," he said without preamble. "I can handle myself. You threw a tray at Derek Holbrook. That's not defense. That's luck." He crossed his massive arms. "The boss wants you trained. Basic moves, just in case. So 3 times a week," Roman taught her. How to break a grip, how to throw an elbow, how to use her size small, quick as an advantage rather than a weakness. Eliana's muscles screamed in protest, but she kept going. For Sophia, she told herself. For Mia. Speaking of Mia, the call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Dr. Nathan Chen, head of the burn unit at Hartwell Private Medical Center, his voice calm and professional through the phone. "Miss Cross, I wanted to update you on your sister's condition." Eliana gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "The first surgery was successful," Dr. Chen continued. "The skin grafts are taking well. Her vitals are stable. She's showing signs of increased consciousness." Eliana's legs gave out. She sank onto the nearest chair. "Miss Cross, are you still there?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'm here. Your sister is recovering. We expect her to wake fully within the next few weeks." 3 weeks into her new life, Eliana still couldn't sleep through the night. Old habits died hard. Her body remained programmed for survival, 4 hours of rest, then up again, checking locks, listening for danger, preparing for the next crisis. The luxury of the Valentino estate hadn't erased 2 years of trauma. At 2 a.m, she gave up fighting. She slipped out of bed, leaving Sophia curled peacefully under the silk sheets, and padded barefoot toward the kitchen. The hallway was dark, silent. Her feet made no sound on the cool marble floors. She pushed open the kitchen door and stopped. Marcus sat at the long wooden table, alone. A crystal glass rested in his hand, amber liquid catching the moonlight that streamed through the tall windows. His jacket was gone. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. He looked tired, human, in a way she hadn't seen before. He looked up at her entrance. Neither spoke. "I didn't know anyone was awake," Eliana finally said. "I don't sleep much." Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't an order either. Something in between. Eliana hesitated, then crossed the room and sat down. The moonlight painted everything in shades of silver and shadow. In this light, the scar on Marcus's face stood out starkly, a pale line cutting through the darkness of his features. "Water?" he asked. "Please." He poured her a glass from a crystal pitcher. Their fingers brushed when she took it. Neither acknowledged the contact. "You're good with her," Marcus said after a long silence. "Sophia. She's different now. She was always this way. She just needed someone to see it." Marcus studied her. "You sound like you understand." "I do." Eliana traced a finger along the rim of her glass. "My sister, Mia. After the fire. She was different too. People looked at her scars and saw damage. They didn't see her. Tell me about the fire." It wasn't a demand. It was almost gentle. Eliana took a breath. 2 years ago, 3 a.m. Electrical fault in the walls, that's what the investigator said. I woke up to smoke and screaming. The memories rose like ghosts. The heat, the terror, her mother's voice calling from somewhere she couldn't reach. I got Mia out through the window. But my parents, she swallowed. The ceiling collapsed before I could go back. Marcus said nothing. He simply listened, his gray eyes steady on her face. "I tried," Eliana whispered. "I tried to save them, but the fire was everywhere, and I could only carry one person. You chose your sister. I chose the one I could reach." Silence fell between them, heavy, but not uncomfortable. The silence of 2 people who understood loss. "I also lost someone," Marcus said quietly. "My wife, Isabella." Eliana looked up. 3 years ago, we were in the car. Me, Isabella, Sophia, stopped at a traffic light. His jaw tightened. A motorcycle pulled up beside us. I saw the gun too late. "Marcus, 3 bullets. His voice was flat, empty. I covered Sophia with my body, but Isabella was in the front seat. She took all 3. The moonlight caught the wetness in his eyes. He blinked it away. Sophia saw everything, her mother's blood, the light leaving her eyes. Marcus stared into his whiskey. She screamed for 3 hours at the police station. Then she stopped. She hasn't spoken a word since. Eliana's heart cracked. She understood now. The silence, the fear of strangers, the way Sophia clung to safety wherever she found it. "It wasn't your fault," she said softly. "Wasn't it?" Marcus looked at her. "I built this empire to protect my family, and I couldn't protect the one person who mattered most." Their eyes met, held. In the silver darkness, the distance between them felt smaller, charged with something neither of them named. Marcus set down his glass. "You should go to sleep, Eliana," but his eyes said something else entirely. The 4th week brought visitors. Eliana was helping Sophia with her watercolors in the garden when the black sedans pulled through the gates. 3 cars, tinted windows, men in expensive suits stepping out with the practiced ease of those accustomed to power. "Business lunch," Mrs. Bianchi explained curtly, ushering Eliana and Sophia inside. "The capos are here. Stay out of sight." But Marcus had other plans. "Eliana," he appeared in the hallway, adjusting his cufflinks. "Join us for lunch. Bring Sophia." Mrs. Bianchi's eyebrows rose, but she said nothing. The dining room was filled with men, hard faces, cold eyes. They fell silent when Eliana entered with Sophia in her arms. She felt their stares like physical weight assessing, calculating, dismissing. All except one. "Well, well." A man rose from his seat, smiling broadly. This must be the famous Waitress. He was handsome, strikingly so, mid-30s, with dark curly hair, olive skin, and teeth so white they seemed to gleam. His suit was immaculate, his watch probably worth more than Eliana's old apartment. Enzo Caruso. He extended his hand. Marcus's underboss. His right hand, you might say. Eliana shook it briefly. His grip lingered a moment too long. "So you're the new gem in Marcus's collection?" Enzo's smile widened. "I can see why he's keeping you close." "I'm Sophia's caretaker," Eliana said flatly. "Nothing more." Of course. But his eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Across the table, Marcus watched the exchange. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his jaw, tightening, almost imperceptible. "Sit down, Enzo," Marcus said quietly. "We have business to discuss." Lunch was tense. The men spoke in coded language about shipments, territories, arrangements. Eliana focused on Sophia, cutting her food into small pieces, signing encouragement when the little girl grew anxious. But she noticed things. Enzo's phone buzzed constantly. Every 15 minutes, he excused himself to take calls outside. Each time he returned, his smile seemed sharper, hungrier, and the way he looked at Marcus, it wasn't respect. It wasn't loyalty. It was envy, bitter and barely concealed. After lunch, Mrs. Bianchi cornered Eliana in the hallway. "That man," the old woman whispered, nodding toward the garden where Enzo was smoking a cigarette. "Be careful around him." "Why?" "Because snakes don't hiss before they strike, Mrs. Bianchi's dark eyes held a warning. They smile first. Roman shared the sentiment, though less poetically. "Don't trust Enzo," he muttered, while walking Eliana back to Sophia's playroom. "Don't tell him anything. Don't be alone with him. Does Marcus know?" Roman's silence was answer enough. That night, Eliana couldn't sleep. Again. She stood at her window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens. Movement caught her eye, a figure near the rose bushes, pacing back and forth. Enzo. He held a phone to his ear, speaking rapidly. Too far away to hear, but his body language was clear. Furtive glances toward the house, hunched shoulders, hand gestures sharp with agitation. When he hung up, he looked directly at Eliana's window. She stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding. He smiled, that gleaming, too perfect smile. Then he walked back toward the guest wing, as if nothing had happened. Eliana stood in the darkness, mind racing. Patrick Malone wanted her dead. The Irish mob was circling. But watching Enzo disappear into the house, she wondered, who was the real enemy here? The summons came at dawn. Eliana was helping Sophia get dressed when Roman appeared at the door, his scarred face grimmer than usual. "The boss wants you in the study," he said. "Now, what's happening?" "War." The single word hung in the air like a death sentence. Eliana left Sophia with Mrs. Bianchi and followed Roman through the winding corridors. Raised voices drifted from behind the study's heavy oak doors, urgent, angry, afraid. Roman pushed the doors open. The room was packed. Every capo from the lunch meeting was there, plus others Eliana didn't recognize. They stood in clusters, arguing in hushed tones, faces drawn with tension. Cigarette smoke hung in the air despite the early hour. Marcus stood at the head of the room, behind a massive mahogany desk. He didn't look like he'd slept. Quiet. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Silence fell instantly. Roman, report. Roman stepped forward, pulling a folded paper from his jacket. Patrick Malone sent a messenger last night. This arrived at the gate at 4 a.m. He handed the paper to Marcus, who read it without expression. Then he set it down on the desk. Malone has made his demands, Marcus said flatly. He wants Derek Holbrook returned alive or dead. He doesn't care. He wants $2 million in compensation for the insult to his family name. Murmurs rippled through the room. And? One of the capos asked. Marcus's eyes found Eliana, standing near the doorway. He wants the girl. Every head turned to look at her. Eliana's blood ran cold. The deadline is 48 hours, Marcus continued. If we don't comply, Malone promises full-scale war. Every business, every territory, every man loyal to the Valentino name. The room erupted. Voices overlapped arguments, fears, calculations of cost and consequence. Eliana caught fragments. We can't fight the Irish and keep the docks. Maybe if we offered more money. What about the girl? Is she worth a war? Perhaps. Enzo's smooth voice cut through the chaos. He stood near the window, arms crossed, that perfect smile playing on his lips. Perhaps we should consider negotiation. The room quieted. Malone is reasonable, Enzo continued. He's a businessman, like us. If we return what he asks for, show some goodwill, maybe we avoid unnecessary bloodshed. He glanced at Eliana. Something cold glittered in his eyes. After all, she's just a waitress. Is she really worth destroying everything we've built? Marcus didn't move. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. The capos exchanged nervous glances. Even Roman shifted uncomfortably. Then Marcus spoke. Derek Holbrook is dead. Gasps echoed through the room. He died the moment he put his hands on my daughter. Marcus's voice was ice. His body is at the bottom of Boston Harbor. There's nothing to return. Enzo's smile flickered. Marcus, that's as for the girl. Marcus turned to face the room fully. His gray eyes swept across every face, lingering on Enzo's. She is under my protection. She belongs to this family now, and no one, not Malone, not the Irish, not anyone in this room will touch her. Boss. One of the older capos stepped forward. Think about this. A war with Malone, I have thought about it. Marcus placed both hands on the desk, leaning forward. For 3 years, I've watched Malone push into our territory, our docks, our unions. I've been patient. I've been diplomatic. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. I'm done being patient. He straightened. Send a message to Malone. Tell him Derek is dead. Tell him the girl stays with me. And tell him. A cold smile crossed his face. If he wants war, he'll have it. The meeting dissolved into stunned silence. Marcus walked toward the door, toward Eliana. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could smell whiskey and gunpowder. From now on, he said quietly, you don't leave my sight. 2 days of waiting felt like 2 years. The estate had transformed into an armed camp. Guards patrolled every corridor. Weapons appeared on tables, in drawers, strapped to hips. The beautiful mansion that had begun to feel like home now felt like a bunker awaiting siege. On the second night, Marcus called a dinner. A show of strength, Roman explained to Eliana as she dressed. The capos need to see the family united, unafraid. But fear hung over the dining room like a shroud. 8 men sat around the long table, each one armed. Shoulder holsters bulged beneath tailored jackets. Hands never strayed far from waistbands. The chandeliers cast harsh light over plates of food that no one seemed interested in eating. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his face carved from stone. Sophia was beside him, unusually quiet, pressing close to her father's arm, and Eliana for the first time had been given a seat at the table itself. You're part of this family now, Marcus had said. You sit with us. The honor felt more like a death sentence. Eliana forced herself to eat, cutting small pieces of steak she couldn't taste. Across the table, conversations rose and fell, forced laughter, nervous jokes, discussions about logistics and safe houses. But Eliana's attention kept drifting to Enzo. He sat 3 seats down, his plate untouched. Every few minutes, his hand slipped into his jacket pocket, pulling out his phone, glancing at the screen. His knee bounced under the table. His perfect smile was nowhere to be seen. Something was wrong. Eliana leaned toward Sophia, signing discreetly under the table. "Stay close to me." Sophia's dark eyes widened, but she nodded. The minutes crawled past. 9 o'clock. 9:15. The tension in the room thickened until Eliana could barely breathe. Enzo checked his phone again. This time, his face changed. A flicker of something anticipation? Fear? Crossed his features before he masked it. He stood abruptly. "Excuse me. I need some air." Marcus's eyes tracked him as he left the room. 9:23. The lights went red. Every bulb in the mansion flickered crimson as the alarm shrieked to life, a piercing wail that stabbed through Eliana's skull. Men leaped to their feet, guns drawn, chairs crashing backward. "Code red! Perimeter breach!" Roman's voice thundered through the chaos. Then the windows exploded. Glass shattered inward like 1,000 knives. Eliana dove under the table, pulling Sophia with her, shielding the child's body with her own. A flashbang grenade bounced across the floor, blinding white light, deafening roar, her ears screaming. Gunfire erupted. Not single shots, automatic weapons. The staccato thunder of death ripping through the dining room. Through the smoke and chaos, Eliana saw figures pouring through the broken windows. Black masks, tactical gear, at least 20 of them, maybe more. "Irish mob, protect Sophia," Marcus roared somewhere above her. He flipped the massive oak table onto its side, creating a barricade. Bullets chewed into the wood, spraying splinters. One of the capos fell, clutching his throat, blood spraying between his fingers. Eliana grabbed Sophia's hand. The little girl was shaking violently, silent tears streaming down her face. Her mouth opened in a scream that never came. "We have to move!" Eliana shouted. She pulled Sophia toward the service door, staying low, crawling through broken glass that sliced her palms. Behind them, the battle raged, gunshots, screams, the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor. They burst through the door into the hallway. Smoke billowed everywhere. Red emergency lights pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Eliana's lungs burned. "This way." She pulled Sophia toward the main staircase, but Sophia's hand slipped from her grip. Eliana spun around. Through the haze, she saw Sophia running not toward her, but toward the stairs at the far end of the hall. The girl was panicked, disoriented, moving on pure instinct. "Sophia," and then Eliana saw him. A figure emerged from the smoke behind Sophia, moving quickly, purposefully. Enzo. His gun was drawn, his smile was back, and he was following the child. Eliana ran, her bare feet slapped against the marble floors, glass cutting into her soles, but she felt nothing. Adrenaline drowned everything except one thought. Sophia. The smoke was thicker on the second floor. Red emergency lights strobed through the haze, turning the familiar hallway into a nightmare landscape. Gunfire echoed from below, distant now, but still relentless. "Sophia!" No answer. Of course no answer. The child couldn't scream, even if she wanted to. Eliana skidded around a corner, nearly colliding with a fallen painting. Where would Sophia go? Where would a terrified 7-year-old hide? The closet, Sophia's bedroom, the walk-in closet where she kept Luna, where she retreated whenever the world became too loud. Eliana burst through Sophia's door. The room was dark, lit only by the pulsing red glow from the hallway. Everything looked wrong, shadows dancing, furniture transformed into monsters. "Sophia? Baby, it's me. It's Eli." A soft whimper. From the closet, Eliana crossed the room and pulled open the closet door. Sophia was curled in the corner, knees to her chest. Luna clutched against her heart. Her eyes were squeezed shut. Her whole body trembled like a leaf in a hurricane. "Oh, sweetheart." Eliana dropped to her knees. "It's okay. I'm here. I've got you." She reached for the child. "Step away from her." The voice came from behind. Eliana's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly. Enzo stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by crimson light. His perfect suit was disheveled, his perfect hair mussed. But his smile, that gleaming, too-white smile, was firmly in place, and in his hand was a gun. "You know," Enzo said conversationally, "I really hoped you wouldn't be here. I liked you, Eliana. You have spirit." Eliana rose to her feet, positioning herself between Enzo and Sophia, her heart hammered against her ribs. "You let them in," she said. "You opened the gates. Someone had to." Enzo shrugged. "Marcus is old, weak, sentimental. He had his time, but that time is over. He trusted you, his mistake." Enzo's smile flickered. "Malone promised me Boston, the whole city. All I had to do was deliver the child and open a few doors." Behind Eliana, Sophia whimpered again. The sound was barely audible, but it drew Enzo's gaze like blood draws sharks. "Here's how this works," he said, gesturing with the gun. "You step aside. You give me the girl, and you walk out of here alive. Simple." Eliana didn't move. "Don't be stupid," Enzo warned. "You're a waitress. You have no part in this war. Take the exit while you still can." "No." The word came out steady, stronger than she felt. Enzo's smile vanished. "No? She's 7 years old." Eliana's voice shook with fury. "She's already lost her mother. She can't speak because of what she's witnessed. And you want to hand her over to the man who attacked her in a restaurant? I want to survive." Enzo raised the gun. "Last chance, Eliana." Roman's voice in her head. "Use your size. Small means fast. Strike first. Strike hard." Enzo stepped closer. His finger moved toward the trigger. Eliana exploded into motion. She ducked left, not away from the gun, but toward it. Her hand closed around the ceramic lamp on Sophia's dresser. She swung with everything she had. The lamp shattered against Enzo's skull. He staggered, crying out. The gun flew from his grip, skittering across the floor into the darkness. "You bitch!" Blood poured from a gash above his eye. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife, a wicked curved blade that gleamed in the red light. "I'm going to cut you apart." He lunged. Eliana stumbled backward, tripping over a stuffed animal, crashing against the closet door. Sophia screamed silently behind her. Enzo raised the knife. Bang! The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Enzo froze. His eyes went wide. He looked down at the red bloom spreading across his white shirt. He turned. Marcus stood in the doorway, gun raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His face was splattered with blood, none of it his own. His gray eyes held nothing but cold, absolute fury. "You touched my family," Marcus said quietly. He fired again. Enzo crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the carpet. Marcus stepped over the body without a glance. He crossed to Sophia, dropping to his knees, pulling the trembling child into his arms. "Papa's here," he murmured. "Papa's got you." Then he looked up at Eliana, blood on his face, fire in his eyes, but something else, too, something deeper. "You saved my daughter," he said. Again. Eliana couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. Marcus rose, Sophia in his arms. His free hand reached out and gripped Eliana's shoulder firm, warm, anchoring. "We have to go. Right now." The library was on the first floor, far from the main battle. Marcus moved through the smoke-filled corridors with lethal efficiency, one arm wrapped around Sophia, the other holding his gun. Eliana followed close behind, her cut feet leaving bloody prints on the marble. Twice, masked men appeared from the haze. Twice. Marcus dropped them before they could raise their weapons. They reached the library. Marcus kicked the door open, scanning the room before pulling them inside. "Lock it," he ordered. Eliana threw the heavy bolt, her hands shaking. Behind them, the battle still raged, gunshots, screams, the crash of breaking furniture. Marcus crossed to the far wall, lined floor to ceiling with leather-bound books. He handed Sophia to Eliana. "Hold her." Eliana took the trembling child, pressing Sophia's face against her shoulder so she wouldn't see. Marcus reached up and pulled a specific book, a thick volume with a red spine. Something clicked deep within the wall. The entire bookshelf swung inward. Behind it was darkness. A tunnel, carved from stone, disappearing into black nothing. "I built this house for a war," Marcus said quietly. "I hoped I'd never have to use it." He took Sophia back and stepped into the darkness. "Stay close. Don't stop for anything." The tunnel swallowed them whole. It was cold, damp. The air smelled of earth and mold, and something older stone that had been buried for decades. Their footsteps echoed off unseen walls. Eliana couldn't see her hand in front of her face. She focused on the sound of Marcus's breathing ahead of her, on the warmth of Sophia's small hand gripping her fingers. They walked for what felt like hours. In reality, it was probably 20 minutes. Then Eliana noticed something. Marcus's breathing had changed. It was shallower now, ragged. "Marcus, keep moving. Something's wrong." I said keep moving, but she could hear it, the strain in his voice, the effort each step cost him. Faint light appeared ahead. The tunnel's end. They emerged into a forest. Cold night air hit Eliana's face like a slap. Stars glittered overhead through the canopy of trees. Somewhere behind them, the distant glow of fire painted the sky orange. The estate was burning. Marcus staggered. "Marcus!" Eliana grabbed his arm. That's when she felt it. Wet, warm, soaking through his shirt. "You've been shot! Just a graze." Marcus pulled away, but his movements were sluggish. "There's a car, 50 meters east. Keys are under the visor. You're bleeding everywhere. I'll bleed in the car. His voice brooked no argument. Move. They found the vehicle, a nondescript gray sedan hidden beneath a camouflage tarp. As Eliana helped Marcus into the passenger seat, another figure burst from the tree line. Roman. The big man was limping badly, his left arm hanging useless at his side. Blood streaked his face, but his gun was still in his hand, and his eyes were still sharp. They're coming, Roman grunted, climbing into the back seat. 5 minutes behind us. Maybe less. Eliana didn't hesitate. She jumped into the driver's seat, found the keys, and gunned the engine. The car tore through the forest, bouncing over roots and rocks until they hit a dirt road, then pavement, then highway. She drove for 2 hours, through sleeping suburbs, through industrial wastelands, through parts of Boston she'd never seen. Roman gave directions in short, clipped phrases. Left here, right at the warehouse, 3rd building on the left. Finally, they pulled into an alley behind an abandoned textile mill in South Boston. Graffiti covered the brick walls. Broken windows stared down like dead eyes. Inside, Roman said. 3rd floor, green door. Eliana helped Marcus out of the car. He leaned on her heavily, his face pale as paper in the dim light. I'm fine, he muttered. You're not fine. They made it up 2 flights of stairs. Marcus's breathing grew worse with each step. His weight pressed harder against Eliana's shoulder. The green door. Roman unlocked it. Inside was a sparse room, a mattress on the floor, a table, canned food stacked in a corner, a safe house, bare and cold but secure. Marcus took 3 steps inside. Then his legs buckled. Eliana caught him as he fell, lowering him to the mattress. His shirt was soaked crimson, the wound in his side not a graze. Never a graze was still bleeding freely. Marcus, stay with me. His gray eyes found hers, unfocused, fading. Sophia, he whispered. Keep her safe. Then his eyes closed. He needs a hospital. Roman shook his head grimly. Malone owns half the emergency rooms in Boston. We show up with a gunshot wound. We're dead within the hour. Eliana stared at Marcus's unconscious form. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. The blood had soaked through his shirt, spreading across the thin mattress beneath him. Then he'll die here. Not if you can help it. Roman met her eyes. You said you studied nursing. I never finished. I was 3 credits shy when, can you stitch a wound or not? Eliana looked at her hands. They were trembling, covered in Marcus's blood. Yes, she whispered. I can try. Roman produced a first aid kit from a cabinet military grade, well stocked. Needles, thread, antiseptic, bandages. He set them on the table beside the mattress. I'll watch the door, he said. Sophia? The little girl had collapsed in the corner, curled around Luna, finally surrendering to exhaustion. Her face was streaked with tears, but she was asleep. Leave her, Eliana said. She needs rest. Roman nodded and disappeared into the hallway. Eliana was alone with Marcus. She lit the candles Roman had left, 3 of them, casting flickering golden light across the sparse room. Then she knelt beside the mattress and cut away Marcus's ruined shirt. The wound was worse than she'd feared. Not a graze. A bullet had torn through the flesh above his hip, leaving a ragged furrow that wept crimson. You can do this. You trained for this. She cleaned the wound with antiseptic. Marcus groaned, his eyes fluttering open. Stay still, Eliana commanded. This is going to hurt. Already hurts. His voice was barely a rasp. Then it's going to hurt more. She threaded the needle. Her hands shook so badly she had to try 3 times. The first stitch made Marcus hiss through his teeth. The second made him grip the edge of the mattress until his knuckles went white. By the third, his jaw was clenched so tight she could hear his teeth grinding. Talk to me, Eliana said. It helps with the pain. Tell me something. What do you want to know? Tell me about Isabella. Silence. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, we met when we were 22. She was a dancer. Ballet. The most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Eliana kept stitching. The needle pierced skin. Thread pulled through flesh. We married young. Had Sophia 3 years later. A ghost of a smile crossed his pale lips. Isabella wanted to leave this life. Start over somewhere clean. I promised her we would. After 1 more year, 1 more deal. His voice cracked. The year never ended. Another stitch. Eliana's tears blurred her vision. The ambush happened on a Tuesday. 3 bullets. She took all of them so Sophia and I would live. Marcus's eyes stared at the ceiling, seeing something far away. Sophia screamed for 3 hours in that police station. 3 hours. Then she just stopped. She hasn't spoken a word since. A tear fell from Eliana's cheek. It landed on Marcus's hand. He looked at her then. Really looked. His gray eyes, usually so cold, were soft in the candlelight. "You're crying," he murmured. "I'm sorry." She wiped her face with her shoulder, not wanting to contaminate the wound. "I shouldn't, don't apologize." His hand lifted slowly, the effort clearly cost him, and brushed the tears from her cheek. "You're stronger than you think, Eliana Cross." She finished the last stitch, tied it off, bandaged the wound with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Then she sat back, exhausted. "Why didn't you run?" Marcus asked quietly. "When Enzo had the gun, when the bullets started flying, you could have escaped, could have left us behind." Eliana stared at his bandaged wound, at Sophia sleeping in the corner, at this man who had dragged her into a war she never asked for. "Sophia needs me," she said. Silence stretched between them. "And," her voice dropped to barely a whisper, "maybe you do too." Marcus's hand found hers, his fingers rough, calloused, stained with blood intertwined with her own. He tugged gently. She leaned down. Their foreheads touched. His breath was warm against her lips. The candlelight flickered shadows across their faces. "Don't ever leave," he whispered. Morning light crept through the grimy windows of the safe house. Marcus woke slowly, every movement sending pain radiating through his side, but his eyes were clear, alert. The fever that had threatened through the night had broken. Eliana was beside him, dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept. "How long?" he rasped. 8 hours. She helped him sit up, propping pillows behind his back. Roman's been monitoring the police scanners. As if summoned, the big man appeared in the doorway. His arm was in a makeshift sling, but he moved with purpose. "News?" Marcus asked. Roman's expression was grim. "You're dead." "Excuse me?" "According to every source we have, Marcus Valentino died in the attack on his estate. Body burned beyond recognition." Roman pulled out his phone, showing Marcus the screen. "Malone's already making moves. He's throwing a victory party tonight at the Emerald Crown. Every Irish boss in New England will be there." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a cold smile spread across his face. "The Black Book," he said. Roman nodded. "If Malone has it with him, he always keeps it close. Paranoid bastard." Marcus tried to stand, wincing. Eliana pushed him back down. "That book has records of every bribe, every payoff, every dirty cop and politician on his payroll. If we get it to the FBI, Malone goes down without you firing another shot," Roman finished. "And we get Boston back." Eliana watched the exchange, her mind racing. "So we need to get into this party." "Impossible." Marcus shook his head. "Every man in that club knows my face. Roman's too. The moment we step inside, we're dead." Silence fell over the room. Then Eliana spoke. "I can do it." Both men turned to stare at her. "No one knows my face," she continued. "I'm nobody to them. Just another waitress. I can get in, find where he keeps the book, and get out." "Absolutely not." Marcus's voice was sharp. "Out of the question." "Why?" "Because Malone will have you killed the moment he suspects anything. Then I won't give him reason to suspect." Eliana met his gaze steadily. "I spent 18 months being invisible at the Sterling House, serving drinks to men who looked right through me like I didn't exist. I know how to disappear in plain sight. This isn't the same, it's exactly the same." She knelt beside him, taking his hand. "Marcus, you can't walk. Roman can barely use his arm. Your empire thinks you're dead. We have no soldiers, no weapons, no backup." She squeezed his fingers. "All you have is me." Marcus's jaw tightened. She could see the war raging behind his eyes, the protector fighting against the strategist. "If something happens to you, then Sophia still has her father." Eliana's voice didn't waver. "That's what matters." The silence stretched. Sophia stirred in the corner, still clutching Luna, unaware of the conversation that would decide all their fates. Finally, Marcus exhaled. "Roman, what do we have for disguise?" The preparations took 3 hours. They dyed Eliana's brown hair, jet black, cutting it into a sharp bob that changed the shape of her face. Heavy makeup altered her features, darker brows, contoured cheeks, lips painted a deep red she never would have chosen herself. Contact lenses turned her blue-gray eyes brown. When she looked in the cracked mirror, a stranger stared back. Roman produced a small silver earring, delicate, elegant, unremarkable. "Microphone," he explained. "We'll hear everything you hear." Marcus took the earring and placed it in Eliana's palm himself. His fingers lingered on her hand. "If anything goes wrong," he said quietly, Anything at all? You touch this earring twice. Tap it? Squeeze it? I don't care. His gray eyes burned into hers. You signal, and I come in, even if I have to burn that whole city to the ground. The emerald crown lived up to its name. Green velvet drapes, crystal chandeliers casting emerald-tinted light, gold fixtures gleaming against dark mahogany walls. The club reeked of money, power, and the thick blue haze of Cuban cigars. Eliana walked through the service entrance at exactly 9 p.m., her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Breathe. You're invisible. You're nobody. The head bartender, a thick-necked man with suspicious eyes, barely glanced at her fake credentials. Agency sent you? Yes, sir. VIP rooms upstairs. Champagne service only. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. And for God's sake, don't spill anything. Yes, sir. He thrust a silver tray into her hands. Go. Eliana climbed the sweeping staircase, each step heavier than the last. The noise grew louder laughter, clinking glasses, the rumble of masculine voices drunk on victory. She pushed through the velvet curtains into the VIP room, and there he was. Patrick Malone sat at the center table like a king on his throne. He was older than she'd expected, 65, maybe 70, with silver hair slicked back from a ruddy face. A fat cigar smoldered between his fingers. A glass of whiskey sat at his elbow. Gold rings glittered on every finger. Around him sat his courtmen in expensive suits, their faces flushed with alcohol and triumph. Corrupt politicians, dirty cops, crime bosses from Providence, Hartford, New York, to the fall of the Valentino empire. Malone raised his glass, his voice booming across the room. May that Italian bastard rot in hell. Cheers erupted. Glasses clinked. Eliana moved through the crowd with practiced grace, refilling champagne flutes, clearing empty glasses. Her hands didn't shake. Her expression remained blank, pleasant, forgettable. Just a waitress, nothing to see here. She circled closer to Malone's table, ears straining beneath the noise. Beautiful operation, one of the men was saying. Clean sweep. How'd you get past his security? Malone laughed, a wet, ugly sound. Had a man on the inside, Caruso. Greedy little weasel, but useful. Shame about him, though. Heard Valentino got him before the end. And the bodies? Burned with the house. Nothing left but ash and bone. Eliana's stomach churned. She forced herself to keep moving. A man at a nearby table raised his empty glass. She approached, pouring champagne with steady hands. The book secure? Someone murmured behind her. She strained to listen. Third floor, came the reply. Office safe. Malone keeps it there during events. Paranoid old bastard won't let it out of the building. Third floor. Office. Safe. Eliana drifted toward the far wall, pretending to adjust bottles on a service cart. She turned her head slightly, lips barely moving. Third floor, she breathed. Office. Safe. Through the earring, she heard Marcus's voice, distant, crackling. Copy. Stand by. Mission accomplished. Time to leave. Eliana set down her tray and began moving toward the curtained exit. Just another server finishing her shift. Nothing unusual. She was 3 steps from the curtain when a hand clamped down on her shoulder. Hold on. She turned. A man stood before her, mid-40s, balding, wearing a suit that cost more than her old apartment. His eyes were narrowed, studying her face with uncomfortable intensity. Do I know you? I don't think so, sir. Eliana kept her voice flat, bored. First night on the job? No. The man stepped closer. His breath smelled of scotch. I've seen you somewhere. Eliana's blood ran cold. The Sterling house. He was there. At one of the tables, the day Marcus came. You're mistaken, she said. I'm never mistaken. His grip tightened on her shoulder. Recognition dawned across his features like a rising sun. You're the waitress. The one who protected that little girl. His voice rose. Malone, this woman, she's Valentino's. The room froze. Every head turned. Every conversation died. The man's accusation hung in the cigar smoke like a death sentence. You're the bitch who slapped Derek, the man continued, his voice rising with excitement. At that fancy restaurant. I was there, I saw the whole thing. Patrick Malone rose slowly from his throne. He wasn't a large man, but power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. His eyes cold, calculating. Reptilian fixed on Eliana with predatory interest. Is that so? Malone's voice was soft, almost gentle. Bring her here. Rough hands seized Eliana's arms. She was dragged across the room, champagne glasses scattering, until she stood before the Irish boss. Malone circled her slowly, studying her like a butcher examining meat. Valentino's little waitress. He smiled a thin, cruel expression that didn't reach his eyes. I heard about you, the nobody who started a war. I don't know what you're talking about. The slap came fast and hard. Eliana's head snapped to the side. Stars exploded across her vision. The taste of copper flooded her mouth. Don't lie to me, girl. Malone grabbed her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. Valentino sent you, didn't he? One last desperate move from a dead man. He is dead, Eliana spat. You killed him. Did I? Malone's eyes narrowed. Then why are you here? He released her chin and grabbed her hair instead, yanking her head back until her throat was exposed. Search her. Hands patted down her body. Found nothing. The earring was too small, too delicate to draw attention. But Eliana's fingers had already brushed against it. Tap, tap. The signal was sent. Revenge? Malone laughed, releasing her hair with a shove that sent her stumbling. You came here alone, unarmed, looking for revenge? Stupid girl. Valentino chose his whore poorly. Eliana straightened. Blood dripped from her split lip, staining the collar of her white blouse. Who said I came alone? Malone's smile flickered. Valentino is dead, he repeated. But there was something in his voice now, a crack in the confidence. I burned his house. I killed his men. I saw the body. Eliana smiled. It hurt. She didn't care. You saw what he wanted you to see. You're bluffing. Malone stepped closer, his face reddening. You're a desperate little mouse with nothing left. No one is coming to save you. Eliana looked him dead in the eye. Are you sure he's dead? For a moment, just a moment, doubt flickered across Malone's weathered face. Then he laughed. Loud, harsh. The room joined in, relief flooding through the tension. Brave, Malone admitted. Stupid, but brave. I'll enjoy breaking you before boom. The floor shook. Screams erupted from downstairs. Gunfire rapid, thunderous echoed through the building. Glass shattered somewhere below. Men shouted in panic. Malone's laughter died in his throat. What the hell? The massive window behind him exploded inward. Glass rained across the room like diamond shrapnel. Men dove for cover, drawing weapons, chaos erupting in every direction, and through the shattered frame stepped a ghost. Marcus Valentino. He was pale. Blood seeped through the bandage at his side. He moved with a slight limp, favoring his wounded leg, but his gun was steady, and his eyes, those cold, gray, merciless eyes, were fixed on Patrick Malone with the intensity of a predator who had finally cornered his prey. Hello, Patrick. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Miss me? Hell erupted. Marcus fired before anyone could react. The first shot took down the guard nearest to Eliana. The second dropped the man behind Malone. Then his team poured through not the army he once commanded, but a handful of loyal men who had survived the massacre. Roman led them despite his injured arm, his face set in grim determination. The VIP room became a war zone. Tables overturned, glass shattered, bodies fell, the air filled with gunpowder and screams. Malone's men scrambled for weapons, but they were drunk, unprepared, caught celebrating a victory that had just turned to ash. Marcus moved through the chaos like death itself, each shot precise, each movement economical. The wound in his side bled freely, staining his shirt crimson, but he didn't slow. Eliana dove behind an overturned table, covering her head as bullets flew overhead. She could hear Marcus shouting commands, could hear the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor. Then silence. She lifted her head. The room was a graveyard. Malone's men lay scattered across the velvet carpet, some dead, others groaning in pain. Roman and the remaining Valentino soldiers were securing the exits. Marcus stood in the center of it all, gun raised, chest heaving. It's over, Patrick. But Malone wasn't among the fallen. The old Irish boss had retreated to the far corner of the room, hidden behind the massive oak bar. And he wasn't alone. Valentino. Malone emerged, dragging Eliana with him. She hadn't even seen him move. One moment she was behind the table. The next, cold metal pressed against her temple and Malone's arm crushed her windpipe. Drop it, Malone screamed. His composure was gone. Sweat poured down his face. His hand shook, but not enough to miss at point-blank range. Drop the gun or I paint the walls with her brains. The room froze. Marcus's eyes locked onto Eliana's. She saw fear there, real fear. Something she'd never seen in him before. Let her go, Patrick. No, 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 no. Malone laughed high, hysterical. You're supposed to be dead. I burned your house. I killed your men. You were supposed to be dead. Plans change. Not this time. Malone pressed the gun harder against Eliana's skull. She whimpered despite herself. Put down the weapon. Tell your men to back off, or I swear to God, Valentino, I'll all right. Marcus lowered his gun slowly, setting it on the floor. All right, see? It's down. Let her go. Kick it away. Marcus obeyed. The gun skittered across the blood-stained carpet. That's better. Malone's breathing steadied slightly. You know what your problem is, Valentino? You've gone soft. Your father would never have traded an empire for a waitress. She's not a waitress. Oh? Then what is she? Malone sneered. Your whore? You're she's family. The words hung in the air. Marcus took a step forward, then another. Stay back. Malone adjusted his grip on Eliana. I'll do it. She's the woman who saved my daughter twice. Marcus continued, his voice eerily calm. She's the woman who stitched my wounds when I was dying. She's the woman who walked into your den alone, knowing she might not walk out. Another step. She's braver than any soldier I've ever commanded. Another step, and she's mine. Roman's voice echoed in Eliana's memory. Use your size. Small means fast. Strike where they don't expect. She moved. Her elbow drove backward into Malone's ribs, not hard enough to break bone, but enough to make him gasp. Then she twisted her head and sank her teeth into the hand holding the gun. Malone screamed. His grip loosened. Eliana dropped to the floor. Bang! One shot. Clean. Precise. Patrick Malone crumpled, a dark hole in the center of his forehead, dead before his body hit the carpet. Silence descended. Eliana stayed on the ground, shaking, blood on her lips. Malone's blood. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then Marcus was there. He pulled her up, into his arms, crushing her against his chest. His heart hammered beneath her ear. His hands tangled in her hair. The safe, Roman called from somewhere distant. Third floor. We have the book. Marcus didn't respond. He was staring at Eliana like she might disappear if he blinked. Then he kissed her. Not gentle, not careful. A kiss born of terror and relief, and something deeper. Something that had been building since the first moment she'd stepped between his daughter and a monster. When they finally broke apart, Eliana was crying. Don't ever scare me like that again, Marcus whispered against her lips. She laughed, a wet, broken sound. Can't promise that. 6 months changed everything. The black book turned out to be more powerful than any weapon. Marcus had it delivered to the FBI, through a carefully selected lawyer, one with no ties to the underworld. No debts to collect. No skeletons to exploit. The dominoes fell fast. 14 police officers arrested, 3 judges removed from the bench, 2 city councilmen indicted. The district attorney himself led away in handcuffs, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions he couldn't answer. The Irish mob didn't just weaken, it collapsed. Without Malone's network of protection, his lieutenants turned on each other. Turf wars erupted, old alliances crumbled. By spring, the organization that had terrorized Boston for 3 generations existed only in newspaper archives and cautionary tales. The Valentino family filled the vacuum, but differently than before. Marcus kept his word. The shipping companies went legitimate. The construction unions cleaned house. The nightclubs paid their taxes. It wasn't a complete transformation. Empires don't change overnight, but it was a beginning. I'm not becoming a saint, Marcus told Eliana one night, watching the city lights from their rebuilt estate. But I can be better than what I was. The new house rose from the ashes of the old. Same location, same bones, but brighter somehow. More windows, more light. A garden where Sophia could play without armed guards watching every shadow. And Mia, Eliana visited the hospital every week, watching her sister fight her way back to life. 4 surgeries. Months of physical therapy, countless setbacks and small victories. But Mia was a cross. She didn't know how to quit. By summer, she was walking again. By fall, she was discharged. She came to the estate for the first time on a crisp October afternoon, her scarred face breaking into a smile as Sophia ran to greet her. So, Mia said later, watching Eliana move through the kitchen with easy familiarity. You found a new family. Eliana paused, looking out the window at Marcus, pushing Sophia on the garden swing. I found a home. The morning it happened started like any other. Sunlight streamed through the breakfast room windows. Mrs. Bianchi had set out fresh pastries, fruit, scrambled eggs. Sophia sat in her usual spot, coloring book open. Luna the bear wedged beside her plate. Eliana poured orange juice, humming softly. She felt Marcus's presence before she saw him. He always lingered in the doorway those mornings, watching them, a habit he'd developed after nearly losing everything. Sophia reached for the jam jar. It was too far, just beyond her fingertips. Normally, she would sign, or tug on Eliana's sleeve, or simply wait until someone noticed. Instead, she opened her mouth. Eli. The voice was rusty, barely a whisper, unused for 3 long years. Eliana froze. Eli. Sophia's face scrunched with effort. Give me. Jam. The glass slipped from Eliana's fingers. It shattered against the floor, orange juice spraying across the tiles. She didn't notice. She was staring at Sophia, at the little girl who had been locked in silence since watching her mother die, at the child who communicated only through signs and drawings and the desperate grip of small fingers. Sophia? Eliana's voice cracked. Baby, did you just jam? Sophia repeated. Stronger this time. Please. Eliana burst into tears. She dropped to her knees beside Sophia's chair, pulling the girl into her arms, sobbing against her dark hair. Sophia patted her back awkwardly, confused by the reaction. Eli crying, she observed. Why? In the doorway, Marcus stood frozen. His hand gripped the frame so hard his knuckles had turned white. His gray eyes, those cold, unreadable eyes that had witnessed death and dealt it without flinching, were wet. The first word his daughter had spoken in 3 years wasn't Daddy. It was Eli. And somehow, that made it perfect. 2 years later, the Valentino estate had transformed. The garden behind the mansion, once cold stone and rigid hedges, now burst with life. Roses climbed the trellises in cascades of red and pink. Lavender lined the pathways, filling the air with sweetness. Butterflies danced among the wildflowers that Sophia had insisted on planting herself. The fortress had become a home. Sophia, 9 years old now, all long limbs and boundless energy, raced across the lawn with a golden retriever puppy bounding at her heels. She had named the dog Luna, after the worn stuffed bear that still sat on her bedroom shelf. Luna, come back. You're too fast. Her laughter rang through the garden like music. She hadn't stopped talking since that morning in the breakfast room 2 years ago. Words poured out of her now, questions, stories, jokes, songs, as if she was making up for 3 years of silence all at once. On a wooden bench beneath the old oak tree, Eliana watched her daughter run. Her daughter. The adoption had been finalized 6 months ago. The papers said legal guardian. But Sophia had called her Mama Eli long before any court made it official. Eliana rested one hand on her swollen belly. 7 months along now. The baby kicked against her palm, strong and insistent. Boy or girl? Marcus settled onto the bench beside her, his arm draping across her shoulders. What do you think? A boy. Eliana smiled, stubborn like his father. Stubborn? Marcus raised an eyebrow in mock offense. I prefer determined. You would, he laughed, a sound that still surprised her sometimes. The cold, dangerous man she had met in that restaurant seemed like a distant memory. He was still powerful, still commanding, but the ice in his eyes had melted, replaced by something warmer. Mama Eli. Papa, look at Luna. Sophia sprinted toward them, the puppy tumbling after her. She skidded to a stop in front of the bench, breathless and grinning. She learned to sit, watch. She turned to the puppy, holding up one finger with exaggerated seriousness. Luna, sit. The puppy promptly lay down and rolled onto her back. Close enough, Marcus said solemnly. Sophia giggled and launched herself onto the bench, squeezing between her parents. Luna scrambled up after her, tail wagging furiously. Marcus wrapped his arms around all of them. Sophia, Eliana, the baby yet to come, and the ridiculous puppy who was now trying to lick his face. You know, he said quietly, looking at Eliana over Sophia's head, the waitress has come a long way. Eliana leaned into him, breathing in the scent of home. She didn't walk alone. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Sophia had fallen asleep on the bench. Luna curled at her feet. Marcus carried her inside while Eliana lingered in the garden, watching the first stars appear. She thought about the woman she had been. Invisible, exhausted, drowning in debt and grief and despair. A waitress serving $40 coffees to people who never bothered to learn her name. She thought about the moment everything changed. A little girl, a cruel manager, a choice that shouldn't have been difficult but somehow was. She had stood up when everyone else looked away. And from that single act of courage, that small, terrifying, beautiful choice, everything had followed. She had once been invisible. Now she was the center of a family. And it all started with one small act, standing up when the whole world sat down. And that, dear friends, is the end of Eliana and Marcus's journey. This story reminds us of a profound truth. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest changes. Eliana didn't have money. She didn't have power. She didn't have connections. All she had was the willingness to do what was right, even when it cost her everything. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Never underestimate the impact of standing up for someone who cannot stand up for themselves. You never know whose life you might change, including your own. In a world that often rewards silence and self-preservation, choosing compassion is an act of rebellion. And sometimes, that rebellion leads to the most beautiful destinations. Now I want to hear from you. What did you feel while listening to this story? Did Eliana's journey touch your heart? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between staying silent and speaking up? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear from the depths of your heart. Your stories, your experiences, your reflections. They matter to me and to this community. If this story moved you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our daily stories of love, courage, and hope. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I wish you good health, happiness, and peace in your daily life. May you always have the courage to stand up for what is right. Take care of yourselves and each other. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.